Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you back to the People's Law School, an effort by the Alabama Association of Justice to educate you, the public, on our legal system. Tonight it is a great honor for me to present to you our presiding judge here in Madison County, Judge William K. Bell. He has been on the bench for several years. Prior to that, he graduated from Auburn University, the University of Alabama. He was a fellow in the American Association of Matrimonial Lawyers, which is as high as you can get in his profession. He was the best divorce lawyer in Huntsville. And then one day around 2002, Billy Bell ran for judge, much to the shock of all of us normal members of the bar who never thought that Billy Bell would do that. He did, and he, as he practiced law, has done an absolutely magnificent job of reorganizing our domestic court system, putting it together, and applying the energy that he has to make all of our world a better place. I say that because I've observed Billy Bell from afar, because I avoid his domestic court. I don't want to say like the plague. It's a very difficult and specialized area, and he has mastered it. And I want you to know I've heard nothing but great acclaim throughout our state, throughout our nation. He has received more compliments on how efficient our court system is. I salute him for it. He and Monica, his wife, have 3 children, 5 grandchildren. He teaches Sunday school, and he works very hard at presiding over our court system. I will also tell you as an aside that today he was feeling a bit under the weather, somewhat sick, and he said, "Alan, I don't know whether I can stand up there for an hour. Would you maybe have a chair I can sit in?" Right away I thought, Judge, I don't think he thought that one through before he got here. That was just a few hours ago, and I want you to know when he came in the door, he said, "No, Alan, I'm not going to sit up there." And it would embarrass me. But I will tell you this, it is an honor and a privilege for me to present to you Judge William K. Bell.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to be with you. I had practiced law in Madison County for 30 years, and I had specialized in domestic relations cases during the last half of that 30 years. And in 2002, one of our good circuit judges, Dwight Fay, was retiring. And I decided at that point in time to run for circuit judge for that open seat for one reason, and that was to start a family court in Madison County. Madison County was the largest county in Alabama without a family court. And a family court is a court where a judge or judges can specialize in cases that affect families and children. And to me, there's no more important case that comes before our courts than a case that affects the life of a child. Now, there are about 3,000 domestic relations cases filed every single year in Madison County. 1,600 to 1,700 of those are brand new divorces. 600 to 700 of those are cases filed for domestic violence under the Alabama Protection from Abuse Act, and the rest of those cases are cases where people are filing to change or to enforce divorce court orders. Once you get divorced in Alabama, it's not necessarily over, because a judge in Alabama always has the jurisdiction to modify certain issues: child custody, child visitation, child support, and spousal support if there was any spousal support or a reservation of the right to award it in the original divorce case. And of course, it was staggering to me to know and to think that there were 6,000 adults and thousands of children who have their lives affected by a domestic relations case filed in Madison County every single year. The last statistics I saw indicated also that 1 out of every 2 children in America will live in a single-parent home at some point in their childhood. 1 in 24 children in our great country live with neither one of their parents. Now listen to these statistics that I just got from the Census Bureau. This was released August 2007. There are approximately 13.6 million single parents in the United States today, and those parents are responsible for raising 21.2 million children, approximately 26% of the children under 21 in this country today. Of the mothers who are custodial parents, 44% are currently divorced or separated. 33% of those mothers have never been married. Of the fathers who are custodial parents, 57% are divorced or separated. 18% of those have never been married. How bad is it? When we formed the Madison County Coalition for Healthy Marriages a few years ago, we wanted to check the statistics and find out how bad the divorce situation was in Madison County. I knew as a lawyer I was busy as I could be. I knew the courts were busy. And so we, over a 9-year period ending in 2005, we checked the statistics to see how many divorce cases were filed each year for every 1,000 marriage licenses issued in Madison County, Alabama. And we found, on average, there were 771 divorce cases filed for every 1,000 marriage licenses issued in Madison County during that 9-year period ending in 2005. Now that's shocking. Now that doesn't mean the divorce rate in Madison County is 77.1%. There's a big debate about how do you figure the divorce rate. But it told us enough to know that we had to do something to deal with the depth of the situation. And so we formed the Madison County Coalition for Healthy Marriages, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Now, there was an interesting article that I read in May of 2007, and it said that the divorce rate in the United States was declining rapidly. I sure didn't see that. And so as I read further into the article, it said that some experts say relationships are just as unstable as ever. And divorces are down primarily because people are what? Living together without getting married. The number of couples who live together without marrying has increased tenfold since 1960. And the marriage rate has dropped nearly 30% in the last 25 years. But the problem is that people just living together are still going to have children. And when those relationships break up, for those children involved in that relationship, it's just as bad as a divorce. And it creates the same legal issues and the same entanglements and obligations and responsibilities as you would have as if the parties were married. It's too easy to get married in Alabama, and it's too easy to get divorced. The most commonly used ground for divorce in Alabama is called incompatibility of temperament. And all that requires is for one party to sit in the witness chair in my courtroom and say, "Judge, I'm unhappy. We have different views and goals and interest in life. I don't want to live like this anymore. I want a divorce." And that other spouse can sit in that same chair and cry their eyes out and say, "Judge, I still love my spouse. We don't have any problems that can't be fixed. I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. Judge, please, don't break up my family." And the law of Alabama is that I have to grant a divorce. I've had cases filed in my court where the parties were married only hours. I had a case where the parties got married at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 1 or 1:30 that afternoon, the brand new husband told his brand new wife, "I think I made a mistake." Now, I don't know what happened in the meantime, but I annul that marriage because obviously that couple did not go into that marriage in the right frame of mind. But I've also had cases in my court where the parties have been married for over 60 years. And I told the lawyers in those cases, and when I'm sitting in this courtroom right now, I said, I will never sign a divorce decree for people who have been married longer than I've been alive. And I was 60 at that time. I said, so you guys know the cutoff. And I recommended to them they get a legal separation where the parties are still married, but they could live separate and apart. And the lawyers saw the wisdom in that and went out and advised their clients, and that's what they did. But when we brought those people into the courtroom to put their agreement on the record, coming in the left-hand door was the wife, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had oxygen in her nose, being pushed by one of the adult children. Dad came in this particular door of my courtroom. He was on one of those walkers with wheels with their two other grown children with him. And I said, what in the world are y'all doing? But we did the legal separation, and so that they could just live separate and apart. And I understand that one of the parties died not long after that. But domestic violence is an issue that I deal with on a regular basis. Domestic violence is a serious problem here, just like it is throughout our country. And we have a good law called the Alabama Protection from Abuse Act, and a victim of domestic violence can come to the courthouse, file a petition asking for protection orders, don't have to pay a court cost. They come before a judge, and all 10 of our judges at the Madison County Courthouse handle these type cases. And then if abuse is proven, then they get an emergency protection order. They then come back for a trial within 14 days after that and have a trial where both parties can be heard, and then the judge makes a decision whether or not abuse has occurred. We have had 4 women who have sat in my courtroom who have been killed when they left the courthouse after getting protection orders. Now, not every allegation of domestic violence is true, but that's what judges are for, and we take them seriously because you just never know. I'll never forget, I was sitting on the bench trying a case, and I had issued a protection order. And my secretary brings me a note, and it says that one of the gentlemen that I'd issued a protection order against had kidnapped his wife and killed her stepfather. My heart sunk because you don't feel it until you know one of those parties and you know what's happened, and the protection order didn't do a whole lot of good, but you still have to deal with domestic violence as a real serious and real problem. Now, what we do is if I find abuse in a domestic violence case, we have wonderful resources here in Madison County. And I can send the person who has committed the domestic violence for professional help. We have good anger management courses. We have domestic violence intervention program courses. And so we try to get some help. The problem is, so many of these victims will come in and file a petition for protection, get the protection order, and then what do? They take that person right back. They don't show back up for court, or they show up and they ask me to dismiss the case. And I'll ask them why. Well, he or she has promised they'll go to counseling. He or she has promised they'll go to anger management. And so I say, ma'am or sir, even though I think you're probably making a mistake, I'm going to dismiss this case for you. But all I can do is hope and pray that I don't ever see you again under these circumstances. And sometimes I do, but I've seen people in my courtroom who have been shot, who have been stabbed, who have been beat unmercifully. And then I see other cases where people are using that particular law for the wrong reason. And I take offense to that as badly as I take offense to domestic violence. And that's where good judges come in, where you can listen to the evidence and determine whether or not the allegations are truthful or not. The national statistics, the last that I saw, are that a victim of domestic violence will leave 7 or 8 times before they're able to stay gone. And all you can do is to hope that they don't get seriously injured or killed by the time they're able to go. Substance abuse is a serious problem in Madison County also. And I see the use of illegal drugs. I see the abuse of prescription medications. And I also see alcohol abuse as a major factor in the breakup of our families here in Madison County. And when I hear evidence of substance abuse or allegations that are credible of substance abuse, then what I'll do is I can have the parties tested right on my floor at the courthouse. I'll call people from the probation department. They'll send me a man and a woman. I'll have both parties tested. I can't tell you how many times I've had 2 people sitting in my courtroom professing to be caring, loving parents, wanting me to give them custody of their minor child, who come back and test positive for marijuana, for cocaine, for crack cocaine, and crystal methamphetamine. That stuff must be the worst stuff you could ever imagine taking in your life. And I'm talking about people from all walks of life. I've had professionals in my courtroom that were substance abusers. I've had people of all income levels that were substance abusers. And what I do is I will then send these folks for an evaluation by an expert. And I require them to go through whatever treatment and aftercare is recommended for them by the professional expert as a condition for them having unsupervised visitation with their children. And all I ask the parents is, choose your children over drugs. Choose your children over alcohol. Doesn't that seem like that would be a simple thing for a loving parent to do? But it's not. I have had so many people who just absolutely gave up, lost everything because of their addiction to drugs or their addiction to alcohol or prescription medications. I had a young mother in my court who left her 2 little girls with young father to move in with her boyfriend into a trailer that her parents owned, started cooking crystal methamphetamine, burned the trailer down, moved with this boy to a flea bag motel on South Parkway and got arrested for manufacture of crystal methamphetamine. And we tried that case, and you see all these pictures in the newspaper and in the magazines about how the meth addicts look emaciated and they've got the black teeth, look like a head cheerleader at any high school. And it just broke my heart. Good family, raised in the church, good people. And there was their little girl sitting there, just a hollow body, because crystal methamphetamine had taken over her life. And so what I'll do is I'll ask those parents to choose their children. I can't just take them at their word. And so what I do is I have them randomly drug tested through the color code drug testing program that is administered by the probation department in Madison County. And so what they do is they'll call in on a phone number every morning. There's a color that's on the answering machine. If it's their color, they have to go in by 5 o'clock and be drug tested. And if they don't show up by 5, or if they submit a positive drug test positive for illegal drugs, or if they submit a diluted or altered sample trying to beat the test, then I consider that to be a positive test and I suspend their visitation rights until I know that that child is not in the care of somebody that's got illegal drugs running through their veins. We've had some success stories. I have had some parents come up to my bench after I sent them for treatment, and they said, "Judge, you saved my life." But we've lost too many. I've lost mothers, I've lost fathers who, when I get these drug tests, positive cocaine, positive meth, positive alcohol. And you just hurt for them. You hurt for the children, you hurt for their whole family, because this just doesn't affect them. It has just a network effect, and there's so many people's lives that are hurt and disrupted because of it. There are some positive developments. I mentioned the Madison County Coalition for Healthy Marriages. We formed the coalition. It was a group of clergy and social services workers, concerned citizens. I was involved in it. Our mission is to strengthen healthy marriages in Madison County. And we feel like the best way to do that is to prepare people up front, to be prepared for the inevitable bumps in the road you're going to hit after you get married. And we brought in a nationwide training program called Marriage Savers, where we train 200 couples to assist clergy within their churches to be mentor couples, to take these couples who are engaged and to help them identify potential problems. Talk about them up front. Now, some people don't get married when you do that, but that's okay, because if they have that bad a problem, they don't get divorced either. But what we do is we prepare them for those problems. And we find that if they'll talk about them up front and deal with them, then they are less likely to throw their hands up and say, I want a divorce at the first sign of a problem in their marriage. We have an annual marriage festival. You may have seen it advertised. We do it every year around Valentine's Day, and we just did it at Ellen and my church, First United Methodist Church downtown. And it was a 2-day event, and we had keynote speakers, and we had different workshops on different marriage situations and things that you need to deal with as a married couple. And we also, at the end of it, renewed our wedding vows, which is a special thing to do. If y'all haven't done that, then you need to think about doing that. I used to do that every Valentine's. Valentine's was on Saturday this year, so I did the wedding renewal at the marriage festival. But you're invited to my courtroom on Valentine's Day if you want to renew your vows. I do not sign divorce decrees on Valentine's Day. I just don't want my name on a February 14th divorce decree. Now, that's not to say I'm real emotional. My wife says I'm about as emotional as a rock, but I just don't think that's the right thing to do. We've also put in a real special room at the courthouse. It's called the Agape Kids Room, and it's a project of the Huntsville-Madison County Leadership Class 22. And the subgroup that deals with the judiciary and the courthouse came to me and says, we want to do a project to help kids at the courthouse. Do you have any ideas? And I said, do I? I took them up to my jury room on the 8th floor. And in my jury room was a long jury table, 12 of the ugliest yellow chairs you ever saw in your life. And I had put in there some stuffed animals and books and toys and puzzles, a little miniature pool table in there for kids to be able to go in there. And that leadership group took that project, raised the money, got a contractor whose construction company, by the way, was Agape Builders. That's the only way we got away with calling it Agape Kids Room. But it's the most wonderful room. Roger Jones, one of our county commissioners, is in this class. The county commission helped us so much with that, and it is the model for the country. The Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court saw it, and she says every courthouse should have something like this. Let me tell you a story about why I had the idea to do that. I was practicing law, and I was handling a child custody case. About 25 years ago, I was on the 2nd floor of the Madison County Courthouse. And we went late one evening because the judge wanted to start something else or go out of town the next day. And it involved a little 12 or 13-year-old girl. I represented the daddy. The mother's lawyer put the little girl on the witness stand, which I generally don't care for. But he put the child on the witness stand, asked her some questions. I didn't ask her any questions. She left and went outside. And she wasn't out there 30 seconds before we heard the worst commotion you've ever heard in your life. Sounded like a fight. And so we all ran out there. And out there in the hall outside that courtroom was that little girl with a female member of each side of her family, each with an arm, trying to pull that little girl to their side of the hall. And I'll never forget that little girl's face. And I said, if I ever take the bench, I'll never let a child sit out in my hall. And so we have this wonderful room for any child that comes to the courthouse as a witness, as a party, as a participant, a victim in any kind of case, criminal or domestic relations, Department of Human Resources. That room is for them every single week. We have children in there. There's one wall that's whiteboard, and they can write on there and write notes to whoever they want to. They can draw pictures. You can't imagine. There have been some just heartbreaking things written on that wall, but some wonderful things too. We've got a big screen TV with age-appropriate DVDs. The hardest thing I have is keep the lawyers out of there watching Disney movies and stuff. We have a computer, not on the internet, I can assure you. But it's just a wonderful room, and we're proud of it. No taxpayer money. The county did gut it for us. And one of the great things the county was able to do for me, they let me paint the door purple. Every door at the courthouse is the ugliest gray you ever saw in your life. And I said, I can't have a children's room with an ugly gray door. Please, you got to let me paint it purple. And our county commission was good enough to let me do that. My greatest concern is that we are raising generations and generations of children who think that divorce and domestic violence and adultery and domestic violence are a normal way of life. And these things are going to repeat themselves. And I am seeing now children in my courtroom getting a divorce who I represented one of their parents when I was a lawyer. How sad is that? And what we've got to do is we've got to break that cycle. I see so many good people in my court going through the worst time in their lives. And I would not wish that on anyone. I'm in a trial docket this week, and I was sitting in a case all day today, just listening to the testimony of two people who stood at an altar at one point in time and said, I'll love you for the rest of my life, till death do us part. And they come into a courtroom and they spew venom. And I do a lot of weddings. That's the best part of my job. And I put pictures of my weddings on the wall, hoping that these people, when they come in here to spew all this venom, will see what they must have looked like at least on the first day. Because they sure don't look like that when they get to me. But it's sad what you see people do. And the heartbreaking part of it is the effect that these two so-called loving parents and their behavior has on their children. And that they hurt each other and try to hurt each other using the thing that they know the other loves the most, and that's the children. I tried a case a few years ago, and the parties had two boys. The oldest boy was brought in to testify, and the parents left the room. The lawyers asked questions, and at the end of the young man's testimony, he looked up at me and he says, Judge, can I tell you something? I said, sure. Listen to what he said to me. I think that they both need to understand that me and my little brother did not need to be in the middle of it. And we did not want to hear what they think about the other person. And we did not want to be in the middle of this divorce. It's hard enough as it is. And they both are too mad at each other to realize what they're doing to me and my little brother. And I love them both to death, but that is the worst feeling in the world, how little they see what happens to me and my little brother. Oh, I just cried. And I told him, I said, son, that is probably the most mature thing I've ever heard said in a court of law. And I'm going to do what I can to help. He left, and the parents who had voluntarily left the courtroom came back in. And there I was. I had taken the full emotional impact of all of that. And these parents had not heard one word of that. And so when I did my order, I put as a last paragraph, I want these parents to know the effect that their behavior is having on their children, as evidenced by the following words spoken to me by their oldest son on the witness stand. And I set that out. And then I said, all I can do is to hope and pray that they love these children enough that they will act accordingly in the future. I never saw them again. So I'm thinking that that had an impact, because I really truly believe that they were loving parents. And they just were so caught up in winning their case. Not a day goes by that I don't tell people coming into my courtroom, you have to put aside whatever problems you have with each other and put your children first. There are no winners in divorce cases, especially not the children. And but that's what people get into. It's almost a psychological thing that if they don't win their case, then they're going to blame somebody for that, and generally it's the judge or their lawyer. The lawyer blames the judge, and of course the judge gets it back. But that's where we are, and that's the nature of the type case that we have. It's an honor to serve as a circuit judge in Madison County. We are sent to a new judge's orientation before we're able to take the bench, and they bring in experienced judges to teach us how to be a judge, because we've all been lawyers. We don't know how to be a judge. Even as much as I sat in the courtroom, I still needed to be trained. And they bring in these speakers and they train you on different subjects. My favorite was former Governor John Patterson. They brought him in to talk to us. The subject of his talk was, "You're not as important as you may think you are." Because some of the new judges, not me, of course, with head blown up and they could barely get through doors, and you getting called judge for the first time, it can have an effect on you. But Governor Patterson, who was also on the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals, illustrated that point by what he said was a true story that he experienced while he was governor, when he and his state trooper bodyguard had flown from Montgomery up to Birmingham for a meeting. And after the meeting in Birmingham, they were going to go on over to Tuscaloosa for another meeting. But when they got out of the Birmingham meeting, the weather had gotten bad, so they couldn't fly. And so back in those days, the only way to get there was on the train. So they ran down the train station, got the last 2 tickets in the passenger car. They went in. It was packed. There was a single seat here, and the governor sat down. Down the row on the right-hand side was another seat. The state trooper bodyguard sat down there. And lo and behold, the governor had evidently sat down in a row of patients from Taylor Hardin Hospital, which is the hospital for the criminally insane in Tuscaloosa. They were coming back from their medical checkups, going back to Tuscaloosa, and a few minutes later there comes an orderly through doing a head count, trying to make sure he had all his folks. And he's going down the row, and he said, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he comes to the governor. He said, "Who are you?" He said, "Well, I'm the governor of Alabama." 5, 6, 7. Now, I don't know if it was just coincidence, but when I got back, they put me in courtroom number 5. I'll never forget that as long as I live, and I'll never leave that courtroom either until the day that I retire. I told Alan I'd leave time for some questions. He said, y'all were a question asking. Yes, sir.
Sir, most of your comments had to do with young kids. You started off talking about an elderly couple. Doesn't the law actually encourage breaking up of elderly couples so that they qualify for Medicare or other benefits or tax purposes or estate purposes?
You know, I can't answer that. I do know that in the old days when I was a lawyer, there were some people that want to get divorced on or before December 31st so they could file separate income taxes and save money. Now to me, that's a crazy thing to do, but people, I guess, do things just for the financial part of it. And I guess there are benefits and there are disadvantages of your marital status, but I would sure hope that two people who have gone to the altar and have promised to love each other for the rest of their life and to spend the rest of their life together would not get divorced just for Medicaid. But you know, there probably are some that do. Yes.
These programs that you send parents to, about how long do they last? Are they all different, or
You mean the parenting programs?
like you don't let them see the kids until they do whatever?
Here's what I do. If I've got a parent who's a substance abuser, then what I will do is, if they have tested positive for drugs in my courtroom, then I will have them go and be evaluated by the state probation department for substance abuse problems. I'll make them undergo whatever treatment and aftercare is recommended for them. If it's alcohol, I make them go to 90 meetings in 90 days of AA. If it's narcotics, I do Narcotics Anonymous. And then what I say is, you can have supervised visitation with the children after you've had 3 consecutive clean drug tests. I want to know that they're not on drugs when they see those children. And then I have the visitation supervised by someone I can trust, like a grandparent or another family member. We also have a monitored visitation program at Family Services Center, which is a wonderful thing to do, but real restrictive, and I hate to do that because my basic philosophy is that it's better for every child to have both parents actively and meaningfully involved in their life. But I also believe that every child's got a right to have a parent who doesn't have illegal drugs running through their veins taking care of them or driving an automobile with them. So, but we also have what we call the Transition in Parenting class, and it is a 4-hour seminar that we require all parents to go to and to complete before any of our judges will sign a divorce decree that affects the life of a child. And it's a wonderful program because what it is, it's focused on the children. And it teaches these parents what their children are going to go through when these parents are going through a divorce. You know, Alan mentioned earlier that there are a lot of groups that have particular focuses on these issues. And listen, I understand that. But I tell everybody, I'm not for the fathers, I'm not for the mothers, I'm for the children. That's all that's important in these cases. Put aside whatever other interest you have, put these children first. That's what's important.
Yeah, I knew about the 4-hour divorce classes, they call it. Actually, to tell the truth, me and my husband were getting a divorce. We landed in the same class, and by the time we got out of the class, we changed our mind and decided we wouldn't.
Bless your heart. And I hope you're still together. You know, it's interesting, during jury weeks, I don't know if any of you have served on juries. I know Brenda has. Jurors will come up in my courtroom while they're waiting to get called for a jury trial, and I love to have them up there. And they'll sit in my jury chairs, they'll pack my courtroom, and they'll watch divorce trials. And their eyes get big around as silver dollars. And I had a gentleman 2 weeks ago who was on jury, came up to me and said, Judge, he said, my wife was on jury duty a few months ago. And he said, she and some of the other ladies on the jury sat in your courtroom. And 2 or 3 of those women were thinking about getting a divorce. And after what they saw in my courtroom, they went back and made their marriages work. It will scare the living wits out of you. And what I tell my counselor friends, if you're doing premarital counseling or marriage counseling, send that couple up to my courtroom. Let them watch cases with me. It won't take long for them to really realize you don't want to be there. And I tell everybody that comes in my courtroom, I'm sorry you had to go through this. It takes too long. I do 60% of the domestic relations cases in Madison County, 60% of that 3,000 cases every year. It takes 14 to 16 months for a contested divorce case to come to a final hearing. That's twice as long as I want it to. Twice as long. But that's the nature of the caseload that we have here in Madison County, which you may have been reading about recently.
Judge,
Al?
would you mention what the effect of a domestic violence conviction or judgment against you does in a future custody case?
And that's a great question. There is a law in Alabama that says that if a judge finds that you have been guilty of domestic or family violence, there is a rebuttable presumption that you are not a fit and proper person to be awarded primary custody of your child. So it has far-reaching ramifications on that. Yes, ma'am.
What if the case was tried and either thrown out of the course or found to be not guilty?
Well, if they're found not guilty, then that's not a finding of abuse.
What if it was thrown out on lack of evidence?
Then that's not abuse. The legal burden of proof for abuse under the Alabama Protection from Abuse Act is that the victim has to prove abuse by a preponderance of the evidence. That's a pretty good burden. But it ought to be too, because a finding of abuse is a serious finding. It has legal ramifications that go far beyond it. It can affect your security clearance, it can affect your job, it can affect a lot of things that go on in your life. And I'll have lawyers come up to my bench and they'll say, now Judge, if this person is found guilty of domestic violence, it's really going to hurt their job. It can hurt their security clearance. And I say, lawyer, that's not a decision for me to make. If the evidence shows abuse, then I'll find abuse. If it happened, it happened, and then the consequences will just have to be whatever they are. Let me tell you about a fairly new law that we have in Alabama. It's called the Alabama Parent-Child Relationship Protection Act. Probably the hardest cases that I have to try in my court are cases where one of the divorced parents wants to move away from Madison County with a child. Man, those are terribly hard cases. The law in Alabama is now that there is a rebuttable presumption that the move by the child is not in the child's best interest. And that burden of proof to overcome that presumption is on the party that wants to move. But some of the most heart-wrenching cases you'll ever hear in your life are over moving a child out of town. We also have a lot of hard cases involving grandparent visitation rights. Y'all aren't as old as me, but I'm a grandparent. Grandparents don't have many rights in Alabama. We do have a grandparent visitation statute, but the burden of proof for grandparents to get visitation rights over the objection of a parent is a pretty high burden of proof. And the appellate courts really look at them with a lot of disfavor. My cases are appealed to the Alabama Court of Civil Appeals in Montgomery. Most of the times I have been reversed on appeal or for granting grandparent visitation rights because I just felt like it was the right thing to do for the child. And then if it was going to be undone, it'll just be undone in Montgomery. And those are very, very difficult, very emotional cases. But you know, we have to have them because quite frankly, there's a lot of couples, parents who don't put their children first and who get caught up in things that children should not be around.
What about grandparent visitation?
Same thing. The United States Supreme Court in a case ruled, if you can imagine this, that a parent of a child has a constitutional right to decide who their child associates with, even to the exclusion of a grandparent. That's the United States Supreme Court. And so Alabama had a grandparent visitation statute that had built into it a presumption that it was in the best interest of a child to have visitation rights with a grandparent. Well, that United States Supreme Court case said that provision is unconstitutional because the natural parent has that right. And so when that was taken out, Then we go through several appellate court decisions trying to establish what the burden of proof is. So the burden of proof is now that the grandparents have to presume that the natural parent's decision is in the best interest of the child. And then the grandparents have to overcome that presumption by clear and convincing evidence. Tough, really tough. Yes, sir.
Judge Bell, I teach high school kids, and a lot of them want to get emancipated from their parents. I know I did at times when I was young, but I was glad I didn't.
Yeah.
What could be a compelling reason for that kind of thing?
I cannot imagine. Sometimes it's hard to get them out of the house. Even, they got college degrees and they're gone, but our world is changing. And I know you see it when you teach high school kids. I mean, gosh, kids grow up so fast today. They're exposed to things I never even dreamed about when I was a kid, much less at my age now. But I cannot imagine why a kid, other than independence, wants to drop out of school, wants to get on with their life, wants to have nobody tell me what to do. But then they can't take care of themselves, and who do they run back to? They run back to their parents, who take them back with open arms, because that's what we parents do. So, it's just a different world that we live in. It's kind of a scary one. But we've got to get back to the basics. We've got to get back to getting more down the middle of the road like we used to be when I was growing up. Yes, sir.
Is there a certain weight to whether the mother or the father has the rights to the child, more or less? If you have a husband and wife, does the wife, her weight carry more for placing the child?
That's a wonderful question. When I started practicing law, you could probably count on one hand the number of fathers that I saw get awarded custody in a court of law. There used to be a law called the tender age doctrine, that if a child was under a particular age, a tender years age, that it was presumed that the child should be with the mother. We have had judges on our bench in Madison County who would just tell you, I'm old-fashioned. I believe a child should be with the mother. Now, this was irrespective of the mother's conduct. But I told, before I took the bench, I called a meeting of all the divorce lawyers. And we sat down and we talked, so I kind of tell them what I thought about things. And this was one of those things. I said, look, I'm not for the mothers, I'm not for the fathers, I'm for the child. If I'm convinced by the evidence that the best interest of that child would be that custody be placed with the father, custody is going to be placed with the father. I also told them that things were going to change with regard to violations of court orders. For the 30 years that I practiced law, I could count on one hand the number of times that I saw a judge put someone in jail for contempt of court for violating court orders. And I'd go to court with clients where the other side didn't pay their child support or were denied visitation. We'd go to court and the judge would say, don't do that again. Well, my clients paid attorney's fees. We're up there. It's taken us 12 months to get there. And then what's going to happen? There's no consequences, so it's going to happen again. So I told the lawyers, I said, that's going to change. And if I find, after hearing a fair hearing and the evidence, that a person is guilty of criminal contempt of court for willfully violating a court order, then I will put them in jail for 5 days for each violation. I don't want to have to do that. And there have been cases where I had to put both the mother and the father in jail. One for not paying child support, the other for not allowing visitation. But what I do is I would have them each serve a weekend in jail when they didn't have the children, in order that the children not be told where the other parent was. And then after they had served each a weekend in jail, I'd bring them back to court to see if they realized the importance of following court orders in the future. Of course, they all do then. And I did that in one case, and the lawyers came back to see me 2 or 3 months later and says, Judge, you remember that case where you put both those folks in jail? I said, I do. They said, that's the best thing you could have ever done. those people are getting along. They're going to ball games and sitting together. They're going to school events. They're sitting together. They talk. They work. They get along. Now they hate your guts, but I said, well, whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
Shame on you. You've got a 9-year-old daughter. You've got other children too, but you've got a 9-year-old daughter. And from looking at the two of you, I would expect that she's beautiful. And I know she's innocent. And I can tell you that she was born of a love relationship at some point in time. In our modern world, those relationships often do not last. That's the world we live in. But this child was born of a love relationship and should never be exposed to anything other than a loving relationship. Now I'm going to tell you something, and this is pretty hard to swallow. And I'm going to start with you, ma'am. Your child, no matter what you really believe about this man sitting over here across the other side of the room, and no matter what you think he deserves or what he truly deserves, your child should always believe that you think he is the best daddy in the whole wide world. No matter what you, and I'm not asking you to respond, and I'm not being judgmental regarding that. That's what your daughter deserves to think. She needs to think my mama thinks that my daddy's the best daddy in the whole wide world. Sir, no matter what you think about the mother of this child, this lady sitting right over here, no matter what you truly believe about her, no matter what she truly deserves, no matter what you think she truly deserves to be treated, how she truly deserves to be treated, your daughter needs to think that you think that she's the best mama in the whole wide world when it comes to her. And that sometimes is a pretty hard pill to swallow. Now, I know, based upon testimony I've heard today, that this child has already been exposed to some things that she should not have been exposed to. She should not see her mother and daddy dispute about anything. She should not hear her mother and her stepmother have any disputes about anything. That's just wrong. What are you raising this child to believe? That it's okay for mamas and stepmamas to fight with one another? That it's okay for daddy and mama to just hate one another or to exhibit behavior that indicates that they may hate one another? Let me tell you what happens. She's an innocent little 9-year-old girl. 9-year-olds are very observant. 10-year-olds are extremely observant. And as the older they get, really, the more observant they are. And let me tell you what happens when they see mom and daddy not getting along. Eventually, and it may have already occurred, they start taking on blame. They start thinking, well, my mom and daddy can't get along, and it's because of me. And I'm going to tell you something, and this is absolutely the truth. I am not going to tolerate this 9-year-old, 10, 11, 12, 13, or 14-year-old taking on blame because you two adults can't get along. And I'm going to deal with it pretty harshly if my order that I enter is violated. Now, some of the standard parenting clauses were incorporated into this order by Judge Hall. I'm not going to read which ones were left out and which ones weren't, but I am making as a part of this order the standard parenting clauses, and I'm going to make sure that two of y'all have these and you can take them with you today, and they address a lot of the things that have troubled the two of you over this child's life, and they address some things that might occur in the future that should prevent you two from coming back to court over anything to do with this child. And let me tell you what, one day she'll stand eyeball to eyeball and look you in the eye and say, why in the world did you act the way you acted about my other parent. And there is not any answer that you can give that will be satisfactory. There has never been a child that's caused two people to split up. It just never happens. It has never happened in my experience, and I did the kind of work that Mr. Brinkley is doing here today. For 28 years, I practiced law before I ever came to this bench. I've seen and heard every excuse in the book as to why I acted the way I acted and why the other parent is awful and shouldn't I shouldn't give her the time of day, or I shouldn't give him the time of day. I've heard every one of those excuses. I've heard everything that pretty much can come up in these relationships. And I can tell you that I was born at night, but I was not born last night. Adult matters are what cause people to split up, not children. And whatever caused y'all split up is an adult thing. And you need to isolate and insulate your child from whatever dispute ever existed between the two of you and between the stepmom and y'all, or might ever exist in the future between you. Your daughter needs to be insulated from that kind of dispute. And if you cannot insulate her from that kind of dispute, then you are violating the spirit of the order of this court. And if it's established before me, let me tell you what happens. I don't know whether Mr. Brinkley's been in my courtroom to see this, but I put people in jail for violating my orders regarding children. I've had both sides of a case go to jail more than once in my courtroom because I felt both sides had violated the spirit of the order of this court. And that's no threat on my part. I take no pleasure in putting anybody in jail, even in the criminal cases that I have. It's not anything that I take pleasure in. But I can tell you this much. This little girl, I'm on her side. I'm not on your side, ma'am. I'm not on your side, sir. I'm on her side. And if y'all violate the spirit of what I'm talking about in the future, somebody's going to jail if it's proven to me. And that's just the way it's going to be. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.